In our last chicken composting video, I was talking about a few things we're trying out for this spring, including adding containers around the edges of the composting space that we added red wigglers to help create like a worm edge for the space, and a few other things. One of the things that I found though early on is that the rate of compost that we're generating, this is a common theme with all of this, is just too fast for us to be able to bring it out of the system. And in fact, this back area, within a few weeks of spring, I was at a point where being able to pile this up, we had no space to be able to bring in new raw food scraps. The pile would pile up, we'd put in food scraps, and that would just simply get buried by the compost as the chickens kicked it apart. So we're leaving this area in the back here to mellow out and finish off into compost. Probably within a month or so we'll be able to bring this out of here. And what I've gone ahead and done is created a little bit more thoughtful pipeline that has 4 distinct stages. And I want to talk about that, and then of course we'll do some chicken TV after that. It doesn't feel groundbreaking in any way, but by having a pipeline for the compost that has discrete sections that the compost can move through, we're finding a few weeks into this system that we're able to keep raw food scraps organized and not completely buried by the compost as it goes. So for example, in this first bay, 2 days ago we added food scraps to this area, and the chickens of course kick it apart, they eat as much as they can, and they're burying it in compost, in cover material. But I can pile it up in here, and continuing on with that theme of having worms be able to interact with this a tremendous amount, we've flanked the whole edge with crates, and in particular milk crates, which are absolutely fantastic in these systems. They're easy to move, they're porous on all sides, and worms can grow in here as well as sprouted seeds. I'm not sure if there'd be any in this one. Yesterday I poked these apart. But what's nice about this is it allows us to pile up the compost, and as they kick it apart, it keeps that first section organized. After a few days, so this is raw food scraps from 2 days ago. In a few days, we're going to move this entirely to this bay. Each of the bays will get shifted one section, and each time we move them, so for example, here's the third bay. This is about, maybe 12 days after being raw food scraps. And I've added wood chips, I've added some hay, and what's nice is I can use these milk crates each time I move it to a new bin or to a new bay. I can just a little bit go through and process out some of the sticks, stones and bones, or whatever else might be there that needs to get filtered out. Whatever seeds are going to sprout have had a chance to really sprout by now, and so the chickens can keep interested in this. And again, if there are worms in these containers all the way around, there's a chance for them to migrate into the material at each stage. So this is about 15 days from raw food scraps, and it'll ultimately move to this final bay where I can do a final sifting, or we can do a final sifting, and add a little more soil if we need to, and use our nose to determine if it feels ready to be brought out to the garden as a mulch. And since we're generating so much compost, they're generating so much compost, we absolutely need this pipeline of raw food scraps a few days in with bulking material, a few days further on, and then finishing. And from here, it's closest to the access we need to bring it out of the space. So we'll see how this evolves. I haven't filled all of the totes just yet. But if you can imagine, the material you're looking at here is roughly 20 days from being dumped raw food scraps in that first bay. Just like with all of these videos, we're not suggesting that this compost is finished or you could seed it out to lettuces or anything like that. But as a deep mulch to fertilize our garden, this material seems to be absolutely amazing. We're finding putting squash, now that we're in mid-June, either transplants or direct seeding squash into this material, 5-gallon bucket dumped in the garden, seems to be germinating and growing beautifully for us. So that's the system in a nutshell for this season. We'd love to hear feedback on what folks think, and we'll keep sharing notes.